Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. This is your host, Kate Did. Welcome to part two. This is the podcast where we tell stories, give resources, and change the narrative of homelessness. And thank you for coming again this week. We hope that you can take something from this part two of the story. Also, if you're a person who wants to be on the podcast, the requirements are that you are a family who is in shelter with a child under 21 in the US. And if you also want to just give resources for New York City, we love to do that. Maybe when we get bigger, we could do more resources for different states, but right now we can only do New York City because we're very small as an organization. So that's all we have the bandwidth for at the moment. Also, please follow us on all our social media accounts. We have YouTube, we have TikTok, we have Threads, IG. Just if and also if you have a concern or want somebody to talk to, definitely hit me up on Instagram. I'm always available pretty much all the time. I'm always up. I rarely sleep. So, and I'm in the city of who never sleeps. So, this definitely goes well with me. Any resources that we talk about in this podcast will be listed down below. And I hope you enjoy. Bye.
Okay, the landlord agreed. Okay, management is here. Okay, you got something on House to Connect. Okay, and it's just processing. They're just processing really the paperwork. But one thing I hope and pray that future families that go into the shelter, I hope there is something where they can educate us as a like. Because my thing is, you're excited when you meet your housing specialist, right? And let's say an apartment, they give you the voucher, right? Let's say the voucher is 3,000. Now they're not educating us as the client, the person in shelter. Like, listen, the goal is to find something reasonable because once the voucher expires or once you are in a better position, you're on your own for whatever the amount of the rent is. And I feel like that's
Right.
where a lot of things end up going back into shelter because it's like you're so excited, like, oh my God, this luxury apartment just hit me up. It got a pool, basketball court. Before you know it, 5 years done went by and the rent is $4,000. Oh my God, I cannot afford this $4,000. Why didn't my housing specialist tell me that when I had the voucher, I should have looked at something that was, you know what I'm saying, 2,500 or less than that, like something that's more affordable. So
Right.
hopefully, you know, as time goes by, because as time go by, different things change. There's a better system, or because the thing is, when you meet the reason we was talking about the caseworkers and how I had to meet her once a week. The point of meeting once a week is just so you can just express to your caseworker like little updates, things that's going on with you. Like, how's your job search going? How's how things are going. And like I just explained, this is what she should have told me. Once she handed me that voucher, she should have said, Miss Williams, no, here's a few apartments. We're gonna do this together. Because they just give you the voucher and it's like you're on your own. You have no idea what it is you're really looking for. You just end up applying for these expensive apartments and then God willing, you can manage it because it's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
No, it's definitely it sure is. I think that's another thing they need to work on with people who work at the shelter is explaining what it is and understanding that, like you said, after that, after 5 years, you even before 5 years, if you work a good enough job after a while and your job was good enough in their mind, could be $20 an hour and you work in full time, that for HRA, that might be too much. To be honest, $60 an hour is really honestly the way they make it seem like it's too much. So be very depending also, this also depending how big your family is. If your family has 3 or 4 people, you have more wiggle room to make more money. But remember that if you make a penny over, you're cut off. Like you might get other benefits, but the voucher might be the problem for you. And that's the sad part about it. And you're not gonna get the benefits fully either. You're gonna get like part benefits. So a lot of things are falling off at one time, which is honestly overwhelming for a person to do. So just think about that. But after 5 years, unless you have a circumstance, usually if you have kids, age, depending on your particular circumstance, they can push it more than 5 years, but don't have that in the back of your mind because it's a yes or no for that. It might not, it's a maybe. It's not really like, oh, it's gonna go through right away. Yeah, sure. No, it might not go through. And because you're gonna be in that same position, like she said before, going back to shelter because you can't afford the rent in that place. Be very mindful on how much the rent is. Remember, every couple of years, or I don't even know how it go. I think every year, depending on what landlord you're in, they could put it up. They could put the rent as much as they, not as much, but they have a reasonable, you know, amount that they could put it up to. And if you can afford, think about that. If you're there 5 years, it might have went up every year since then. So the fifth and sixth year, it might be already too high for you, and you're like, oh, how did I get here? So you got to think about these things. And I want to also put people who have soda. They give, if you don't know, soda is another voucher program that they have, usually for people who are higher income. When you're on that program, don't wait till the last minute to, oh, say, oh, I'm gonna save money for rent. While you're going for that year of them paying your rent, put that money away to the side so when the year is up, you can still have money in your bank. We're gonna pay another year for you. Just think about it in it like that. Don't, I know it's hard, especially in the economy, to do certain things, but be very, very mindful on how things go because you just never know. Okay. So just think about those things with the voucher. The vouchers can be very, very tricky and they could change it. And then the problem is also because of the funding, they could stop it. So you might have it now and they'll make whoever have it now, go off of it. And it might not be here in a couple of years. Example, City FEPS, they have City FEPS, they had a program called Link. They had many other different programs. And Link, it was like Link 1, Link 2, Link 3, Link 4, Link yada, yada, yada. And they all had different eligibilities. They put all those in City FEPS after a while. So just be mindful of those things because the rules might change for you even in the future. So just be mindful of those kind of things. Yes, I think that's some things like we said that the shelter can work on and the city could work on, honestly. Paperwork and things like that. Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. When you got your apartment and how you did everything, did the paperwork go through right away? Did you have any errors, have to send it back? How did that work out for you and your family?
So yeah, actually, so what ended up happening is, um, as I was in the process of like, dealing with the paperwork for the apartment that I'm currently in, when you first enter shelter, they put in an application called a homeless housing application, and that's like a citywide application. And at some point during your shelter stay, your application might get pulled through HPD. So what ends up happening is, as I was in the process for this apartment, an apartment reached out to me in Brooklyn through HPD. I was actually selected, but but the reason I didn't take it was because I was sent a video and I didn't want to make a mistake of accepting an apartment through video that I wasn't even sure of how it looked. I wasn't sure of anything. So my housing specialist ended up putting the paperwork into that apartment. But when I expressed to her, like, listen, I understand HPD selected me, but I was also selected for a different apartment. I want to give them a try. And then if it don't work out, then I will continue my search. Like I will continue my search because I didn't want to make that mistake of just accepting anything, because we hear horror stories where you accept anything and then a month or two in, it's a disaster. You know what I'm saying? Things that
Right.
you thought you saw when because things you thought you saw, you did, now things are falling apart and now you don't have this and that. So um she had to end up canceling my paperwork for that apartment and she had to end up putting the paperwork through for the current apartment I'm in. But I'm thinking everything is okay. Like, she put the paperwork in. Okay, I'm just waiting for the approval, not realizing the whole time my paperwork got sent back. There was something that management needed from my housing specialist that she had to resubmit. And So I'm thinking, oh my God, my food letter's gonna come in the next week or two. No, the whole time my packet was sent back, I didn't even realize it was sent back. And then when I contacted her, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna put your paperwork in today." So she resubmitted it, and thank God when she resubmitted it, everything went through. So it only got sent back one time for like a error or correction, and then once she resubmitted it, everything was approved. It went through properly because they had me nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I always had in the back of my mind, like, listen, if this apartment don't work out, I'm still gonna continue to look for other things. Like, I'm not about to just sit here and just depend on this one and then, God willing, something else better comes, my way. But thankfully everything was fine in the end.
So you reached out to her and then she put it in that day. So what if you didn't reach out to her? Or what happened?
So on Facebook, I was part of this group that deals with like, they tell their experience about vouchers and like, their whole experience. And there's a
Right.
number that I didn't even know that when you're in shelter, there's a number that we can call. So I
Yes, it
ended up
is.
calling them.
Right.
Yes, I ended up calling that number like, hey, my name is so and so. I just wanted to check on the status of my housing packet. I was told it was submitted, and then from there they'll be able to tell me, like, listen, no, your housing packet was sent back. We still haven't got it yet. And that's when I reached out to my housing specialist, like, hey, I just called this number because I was curious, and come to find out the package was still sitting there. She was waiting on the document to come back so that she was able to resubmit it. But if I didn't call that number, I would probably be like everybody else that's just waiting. That's just waiting for approval to figure out. So I would have had to probably a month probably had to go by, 3 to 4 weeks probably would have to go by for me to realize like, hey, what's going on with the paperwork? Is everything okay? But yes, I definitely reached out to her to realize that um my stuff wasn't submitted. Like it got sent back.
That's another thing I think we need to work on because for one thing, anybody who's listening, the number will be down below if you want to call to see if your application's updated. So just think about that. Everything we talk about will be plugging those things down below. And second thing is that I think we need to work. They've been updating because that hotline was made last year. It premiered last year, and it seems like it's working well for people. I've sent people to get this information, and they're able to help them and their family to see where their applications are. I helped somebody, and they found out that the caseworker didn't even do their job. Nothing was in the system. So it's a very helpful, and it might honestly get overwhelming for the people who are working there. I'm not sure how the good or bad the wait time is, and usually with these things it's usually 9 to 5. But I feel like it goes after a little bit from 5 o'clock. Don't quote me on the time. I know for sure it should be open at 9 o'clock in the morning. Another thing is that city FEPs, the people who are in charge of it, needs to be able to ping the client and ping the caseworker with an email or a text or something like that to make sure that the client is updated. You would honestly, the hotline would not be so congested if they just said, like, when there's an error, it only automatically bounce back to the client to make sure the client can go to the caseworker. I think that's a way of taking out the middleman, and people have to. What if that person don't have a phone to have to be calling, waiting on hold? What if they don't even know about that phone number? So they're gonna be screwed on top of that. Also, maybe I think that phone number should also be given out to people when they fill it out after the caseworker fill things stuff out. Is a way for the client to be on top of the paperwork, also to make sure that everything is going fine. I think there's a lot of different ways we can go about different parts of this journey while you're in shelter because if I just feel like if you just, know in ahead of time things are happening, if something on your part that you might need, a new pay stub, new this, new that, you can at least get it ready and give it to your caseworker and say, hey, put this in. Because the caseworker honestly has a lot of work to do. And they might forget we are humans, nobody's perfect. So they might forget to put something on time. But if you can get it to them at least faster than, normal, then they could put it in for you, and then that could be pushed back into the system and get your paperwork on the ball. I think that's another way of getting people out of shelter faster and making sure that everything goes straight. But yeah, but overall, it seems like your shelter experience wasn't that bad. And it's from what you could say it yourself in your own words to make sure the people can hear what your experience was fully. But
Mhm.
overall, how do you rate your experience at shelter and what things you would think would be good to change other than the stuff you already said already?
So my overall experience, if I had to rate it from a 1 to 10, I would give it a I would give it a 9. I would give it a 9. The reason I would give it a 9 is because um the thing, like I've mentioned before, the thing is, as the person going into shelter with your family, it's like we have to advocate for ourselves. Meaning, if one person is not doing their job, we just, you just go to the next one. Like, we just have to make sure that we're doing everything on our end so that so that we can secure housing for our family, and we're able to get out of the shelter. Um, besides the things that I mentioned, those to me, that's the main important thing. Like, those are like the main important things that I feel, could definitely help and definitely needs to be like, some kind of change. Because like I said, when you're going into shelter, you want your caseworker and housing specialist, you want them to make you feel like you have a sense of ease, because it's a lot. Like, mentally, it is a lot. Like, if you if you've never been in the shelter and you had to go, it's a lot on your mental. And all I like, it's a lot on your mental. That's all I can honestly really say. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't have it any differently. Like, my experience, I wouldn't really have it any differently. The only thing I wish that I could have did differently is, more communication. Like, when it came to the communication with everyone, that's it. But as far as my overall experience wasn't bad at all. Like, I don't really have too many complaints. And I'm thankful for that. I don't have a lot of bad things to say. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's cool. That's cool. I think, yes, mental health and just it takes a toll on your mental health. People think that, I think a lot of people had a misconception that when you get in the shelter, boom, you get an apartment, you're out. And the reality is it can take a long time to get out. And when you're in a shelter for a year, it doesn't feel like a year. It feels, well, for me, it felt like I was in there for years. Like I was in there for 2, 3 years. That's what it felt like. It really drains you. I worked in Manhattan. My daughter went to school in Brooklyn. I lived in Queens. And at one point, I stopped working in Manhattan and I ended up working in Queens, but I had to bring my daughter to Brooklyn. You might say, why just take her out of school and just keep her where you are? The truth of the matter, I didn't have anybody that I trusted in Brooklyn as a daycare provider. And when you have a child who does not speak yet because she was a baby, um, they could only say but so much words. And the place I had her, I trust where she was. At the time, she went in there when she was 4 months old, and we moved out. I want to say after a year, that's when we were in the shelter. But she was first born was like couch hopping in a way. Well, technically bed hopping, but that's a different story, as you might know from my stories I told before on different podcasts. But yeah, I want to make sure my daughter is safe. And because of that, I prefer get up early and do the crazy journey and then pick her up than to have her in a place I'm not sure if she's going to be safe or not. I don't want to get a call, oh, sorry, something happened to your child at school. I don't want that call. And I know what happened to me as in the daycare growing up, so I want to make sure that my child's in a safe possible thing. And honestly, the thing about it, you're not gonna know all the time if it's 100%, everything's gonna be all right. My daughter's in school right now, she's 9, she can speak, and I'm like, I still have one eye on the people like, are you good with my child?
Mhm.
Like, you just never know who is
No,
crazy
you
that
have
day.
to.
So
With all
I'm
these things happening, you definitely
yes,
gotta
yes.
pray.
You
But
do for sure.
the average time they really say that most families stay in a shelter is a year, like a year or a little
Yes.
over a year. Some people
Yeah.
stay in there 2, 3 years, and then people's like, oh my God, how are you in there 2, 3? Because it depends on the situation. You know, some
Right.
people don't have their paperwork ready, or something is just not right, you know, where it has to be sorted out. And it takes time. Like me, it's like it didn't feel like a year, 4 months, but it definitely was, you know, that long. And people's like, how do you do it? Like, how is your mental? How do you do it with kids? You just have to. Like, you know, I knew at the end it was gonna be an amazing result. You know what I'm saying? I didn't care about, see, when I went into shelter August 14th, I didn't care if it took me a year, 2, 3. I knew that at the end of the day, I was gonna get out. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of how much time it took me to get there, I knew that I was going to get out because I knew that at the end of the day, I wasn't gonna allow them to just make me accept anything. You know, because that's the thing that a lot of people do in shelters. It's like you're so mentally drained and it's like you want to get out so bad that the first person that calls you, you go with it, you know, without
Right.
really doing your research. Me, I took my time and I told them every meeting I had with my case manager, because what forgot what it's called. IL ILP, Independent Learning Plan. So that's one thing we had to do every week. You know, just go over what, you know, new goals for the week. Like, what is your new goals for this week? And by the end of the conversation, I told her, listen, I don't care if I'm in here for 2 years. I'm taking my time because I know that I have my kids that I'm you know, making sure that they have somewhere that is clean, that's good for them to grow up in. Like at the end of the day,
Right.
this is not my end journey. You know what I'm saying? This is just the beginning to my success and my, you know, and further on in life. But this is just a start. You understand? This is
Right.
not where I'm going. This is not my ending point. So I know exactly what steps I need to take moving forward so that, you know, when the time is up, I don't go backwards, you know, and I don't put myself back in that situation. Because that's my number one thing. I told myself, listen, you're not going back into that place. You understand, regardless of what it is you have to do.
Right.
And I'm in a better headspace. I think I also need that time. Like my time in the shelter, I also needed that time to work on me, if that makes sense. You know, work on me, work on my mental, work on the things that I want to do. So that way it's like I knew that I don't have to depend on nobody. I don't have to do anything. I know that I can do it. And as long as I tell myself and I keep these same thoughts and, you know, positivity and things like that, everything is gonna work itself out. Like everything's definitely gonna work itself out. Especially the man above. You know, he definitely
Right.
blessing me. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely blessing me in ways that I probably wouldn't even think. Because when I say I attempted a few times to go into shelter and I would just have these thoughts like, no, no, it's not the time, it's not the right time. No, I'm not ready. I can't do this. I went to PAC before I made that final. I probably went to PAC at least 2 times before I had no choice. I feel like it got to that point where it was like, you know how like in life you do things to where it's like at one moment it's like, listen, you're gonna keep messing up until you finally mess up and it's like, okay, that's
Right.
it. Like, you know,
Right.
I think that's what I needed. I needed the because my things I kept going back to the apartment, right? And it's like I knew he kept threatening me, like, oh, I'm not signing the lease, I'm not paying the rent, I'm not doing I knew these things, but for some reason, every time I would go and say, okay, I'm gonna focus on me. I'm gonna focus on me, my daughter. We're gonna get out this situation. I would go, but then I would turn back around. When I couldn't turn back, you know that moment when I went and I couldn't turn back around, I could not
Right.
turn back around. So yeah, but in the end, you know, I came out stronger, better, and yeah, I'm just happy to see, you know, my journey through life and where, you know, where I'm gonna be. Like I'm excited to see where I'm gonna be at. You know what I'm saying in the next year or two because you know I definitely want to be other places.
Right.
So that's mhm.
It's definitely a stepping stone for people. I think people don't realize that people like I said before, people just think like boom, you get in a shelter housing. It's not. It's a lot of work. But also people think that like you just go there because you know you have nothing better to like no, go there because it's like literally the last resort. Nobody in their right mind, I think, uh, wants to go to shelter. Nobody wants to do this. It's not a fun. It's not a Hilton hotel. It's not a luxury place to go in. I promise you, it's not. It's not. Um, we go there because we have no else to go, and just feel like is we have nobody to help us. In my situation, I had nobody to help me, so I had to go there, and they gave me the resources and the places to go. The whole journey wasn't the worst. I particularly didn't like it. I didn't like when I ended up getting roaches. I eventually got started getting roaches in my last shelter, and then they had to move me out that room, and then I was good. Apparently, people had rats there, but I never seen a rat there, so thank God for that. And if you don't know, I was
Oh,
afforded for
thank God for
shelters.
that. 'Cause that would,
Yes,
ooh, that's scary.
that would have been scary
One thing
too.
I've heard people say, "Oh my God, rats was calling on me and my baby." I'm like, rats? How? And that's another thing. I feel like as time go by, I hope they really change is like the cleanliness of the
Right,
shelters because the shelter that I was in, although it was a new building, there were roaches. You understand? There were roaches. It didn't matter
right,
how clean. Because me, I'm a very clean person, but the people, the family next to me may not be, or the staff members, they're not cleaning the way they should. Garbage is being piled
right,
up. Like you have to really go in there strong and realize, like, listen, whatever you see, whether it's rats, roaches, mice, boy bugs, whatever, as long
right,
as you got that bleach, that all long as you keeping yourself clean and keeping it clean, you just do what you gotta do. Cause
right.
listen, it's temporary. Like some shelter experience is like being on the episode of Fear Factor for real. Like, we have trials and things we gotta face that we ain't
Right.
never probably, experienced in our life. But once you really go into a shelter, you realize, oh God, this is not for the weak because
It's not.
when I say some of the conditions are horrendous, some of them are horrendous, but I was thankful enough. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really experience definitely not mice. Roaches, yeah, I was seeing them here and there, but all you gotta do is just keep it clean. They had exterminators come, but the poison they put down ain't really nothing.
Right.
So yeah, just all I can just tell people that's going through it, just continue to pray. Everything will get better and just remain focused. Just remain focused. When you go into shelter, just stick to yourself. Don't go in there trying to be buddy and friends. Remember, you have a goal. Your goal is to secure permanent housing for you and your family. Don't let nobody else try to mess that up because you
Right.
have people that will do that. I had people like, oh, let's go hang out and no, ma'am,
Right.
no, ma'am.
Right. It's like
Oh no,
jail. You stay by yourself. You got to.
I'm not here for that. I have these, so I have my kids looking at me like, I no.
Right.
If they want to get out of this situation, they're gonna be looking at me like, especially my daughter, Mom, hello, I want my
Right.
room, I want this. And it's like, mm-mm. So just to make sure you just go in there focused, you do what you gotta do, and at the end, everything will work itself out. And advocate for yourself. And if you feel like don't stress. If you feel like there's something that you cannot do, remember there's always numbers you can contact. There are commissioners, you know what I'm saying, that deals with housing and stuff that you can call that will get to the bottom of it. Like I feel like everybody is here to advocate for us, and we
Right.
don't realize that because they don't tell us like, oh, they just got this big old thing like, oh, if you're going through this, call this number. This. No, it's many people. Like it's many people. When I went into the shelter when my baby was a month old, thank God I did not experience postpartum because when I tell you, it
Right.
was hard and tough. It was hard and tough. Actually, I had a. I'm thank God it's closed now, but I actually had a CPS case, and the
I'm not
reason I had a
surprised.
CPS case, the reason I had a CPS case is because my baby was crying. He was crying because at this time, so before I knew he had acid reflux, I can only imagine, as a human, not as a human, as an adult, a lot
Right.
of things that we go through, I can only imagine how it affects babies. Babies, they can't voice their opinions. I can only imagine how pain is, for babies.
Right.
So he ended up having acid reflux, but I didn't find this out until after. So he was crying, crying, crying. I'm trying to calm him down. On top of that, I'm trying to do multiple things at one time. He's crying. It's quiet because in the
Right.
shelters you can't furnish it. Whatever is in your room in your apartment unit, that's what's there. So a lot of the times it's very quiet. So you could hear little things. So he was just crying, but he's a loud, he's a loud crier, if that makes sense. Like his voice is just loud. Like that's just how he was. So he was just crying, and I was making the bottle, and I was sweeping. I was doing so many different things. Next thing I know, I get a knock on the door, and it's the police and fire department. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my God, like something like, is everything okay? They're like, yeah, we got a call for a mental illness situation. I said mental illness situation for a baby crying. I said, oh, my baby
That's
was crying, but he's
crazy.
good now. He's sleeping. Yes, when I say it, I've been a mother for 8 years. I ain't never in my life had no CPS. You understand?
Right.
No, no. So it shocked me. I'm like, wait a minute. So instead of coming, although this is something you can't do because it's policy of the shelter, we as a client, we cannot go up to people apartments and they can't come to ours. But my thing is this: if his cry was so, if you felt something was so wrong, and mind you, I was in there are mothers, you could have just came and said, "Hey, is everything okay? Can I give you a helping hand?" But the fact that you called, you know what I'm saying, and
Right.
these are mandated. Don't let anybody tell you, oh, because they're not seeing it. They are mandated reporters. They're supposed to report everything, okay? If you even talk
Right.
to your baby loud, your kid loud, okay? Don't be surprised. CPS is coming. But thankfully, um, my worker at the time, she was able to really help me and really give me the resources to childcare and the things that I really needed. Because deep down, it was like, maybe I do need childcare, you know what I'm saying? Just for maybe he needs to go for like a day or two. And, she just gave me the resources that I would need. Instead of looking at it like, oh my God, you're, has a bad situation. In the end, she ended up really helping me. Like, ended up giving me a childcare voucher, all these things. So I was able to really, really get on my feet the way I needed to. And that's how I was able to get like, the vouchers and all that other stuff. And now they put in all these new rules. And I feel like as homelessness gets more and more intense, there's probably going to be a time where a lot of things change because I've even heard now that I'm out the shelter, I've heard that they're trying to increase the voucher amount. And remember, if you're going through a landlord, they want more money. So anything where they can get more money, they're gonna try to put the next person out and then try to take the one with the more expensive voucher. So I wouldn't be surprised if down the line if requirements and all these different things will change because the housing crisis is so messed up. It's so messed up, and I pray it gets better with the time. Hopefully, at some point, they could even bring back Section 8. I feel like if they was to bring back Section 8, that would probably make people move, you know what I'm saying, out of the states. Or maybe they could probably put where city steps can go out of state. You understand? Because that's the thing. It's like we want better for ourselves, but it's like we're stuck out here. And it's like we're stuck out in a city where everything is so expensive. And it's like, how? Maybe that's something they could look at, where they can expand the city facts and all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? To help people stay where they are, or go other places. If I had the opportunity, I definitely would have went somewhere else.
It
I
city
probably went back to Jersey.
city FEPs, you can put it outside of New York City. It only goes to upstate right now. So that's
Yeah, I
how
see.
that
Upstate, and
goes.
then right, and then it's like if you do choose to get housing in New York State, the voucher amount decreases. So everything has its perks, just the goal is just utilize, get the resources you need, and then, just better your situation. 'Cause that's my plan. My plan is just to better my situation. Just use it as a helping tool, resources, and then get off of it. I don't want to. Mm-mm,
I
mm-mm.
don't know if the voucher decreases when you go upstate. I think it stays the same.
Oh,
The
it
voucher,
does.
I believe so. It shouldn't change. The voucher goes up every because we be fighting for it to go up all the
Oh,
time. Not all the time. Like I feel like so far the past like 5 years, it went up twice, I believe. I could be, don't quote me, but I know it definitely went up twice so far in the past 5 years. I'm thinking from like 2020, right? We in 25, so it's the 6 years. So it has gone up. Usually if you have a city fest right now, guys, and if it increases, when your lease is up, you can ask for the increase up, and then your landlord goes from there. So just be mindful of that. When you do a new lease, the following year, you have to always do a new certification every single year. So look out for the increase and know what the increase is. In case a landlord does want to put it up, you can say, "Oh, it increased. It could keep me here." So, and the reason why they do the increase is because prices are going up, and I think that's another way for landlords not to take vouchers. Because a lot of landlords do not want to take vouchers because of everything they hear negative about the voucher. And yes, vouchers do have negative things, but there's also guaranteed money long you do everything properly to keep that person in that particular housing space. So just think about that when everything is happening, that increases do happen. And hopefully, before your lease gets up, that you can go into that increase and have extra money for your landlord. And that trust me, they hear extra money and you're there. They're gonna love that. Long you're also a good client. You can't be a hot mess and want to stay there and think landlord should keep you there. No. If you're not being a good tenant, they want you out.
yeah, they
Bye.
definitely want you out, and they definitely put you out. And please make
Right.
sure when y'all get y'all leases, y'all are reading every fine print,
Yes.
everything. And if you don't understand, ask questions. It's okay to ask questions, and don't sign anything before you see it, view it. You know what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of
Right.
times it's like even me when I was doing my house thing, it's like I didn't realize that utilities are not included. So I'm over here thinking like, oh, I'm okay. And the next thing I know, it's like, no, no,
Some of them
no.
are
So it's
included.
very important.
Depends what
Right.
apartment you're in. All the apartments are different, and if the what the landlord is saying. So again, like she said, ask all the questions up front. Do not wait till you're 5 months in and like, oh, I have to pay a light bill. Don't do that. Please don't do that because
Right.
city thefts have a way that you can get paid and then you can't depending on they increase the voucher based on if the landlord said they're gonna pay certain things or if they're not gonna pay it. So if your landlord said, no, I'm not paying utilities, there is a way to figure that all out. And if they said they are paying utilities, it's a way to figure that all out. Make sure you get that up front. Don't be like a person. Granted, I've never had city thefts, but I never had an apartment I had to pay light in. Water usually comes with apartments, I believe, and heat. I never had an apartment like that. I lived in NYCHA. I grew up in a home. I knew in the home growing up that they paid light, they paid all this stuff, but because I've never personally done it, I feel like I might fumble the bag a little bit. But I think with learning on the process, I might not fumble as much as I think I will. I think I'll be okay actually. I'm gonna speak that into existence. And just ask as much questions. You might think it's a dumb question, but if you don't know, that means it's a good question because you need the information. Don't feel embarrassed in any way to ask a question. If you want to ask it to me, ask me. If you want to ask a caseworker, ask them. If you ask me and I don't know, I'm gonna get a person who does this job for a couple of years, who knows everything, and come back with you the answer. It might not be the same day, but it will be probably a couple of days after, and I'll get back to you. Right now, we're very small as a podcast, so I can answer every question a person gives me in a reasonable time. Maybe in the future when we get bigger, it might not be as fast. But right now, use me as you can for the information you want, okay? I promise I don't bite. I'm not mean about it. I give you the information that I want you to be successful. I want you to have the best life. And when I hear people move out, I'm excited like it's my apartment. And my apartment is trash. I live in Niger, if you don't know. But my apartment is not the best, but I don't care about what I have. I care about what you have and what you're getting for your family. And I'm so, I mean, I am excited. I'll be smiling. I'll be reading people's stuff on YouTube like, oh my God, you moved out. I am so excited. So I want you to make sure that you are excited 2, 3 months down the line and you're not upset that you are bamboozled into a contract you can't get out until the next 9 months later. We don't want that for you. We want the best for you and your family. So think about that. Yes. Do you have anything else that you
I
would like to add?
definitely agree.
Yes.
I definitely agree. Like, just, yeah, make sure reading everything, anything you don't understand, it is okay to ask. And if one person don't know, move on to the next until you get your answer.
Right.
Because you do not. Like I said, I've read so many stories of people just, you know, taking anything. And the apartment looks so nice, but then when you a month in, it's like, oh my God, the heat doesn't work. You start finding out little things.
Right.
And this, because even this one apartment in the city that I went to go see, I ended up trying to turn the water on. The water came out brown. I said, "Oh no!" Then I tried to turn on the stove. The stove wouldn't cut on. I'm like, "What happened to the stove?" He's like, "Oh, I think." I said, "You know what?" And I think this is not for me. Have a nice day, because no, like little things like that where people just be telling you, "Oh no, that's just the water supposed to come out because we." Mm-mm. Next thing you know, you move in, you and your children are sick. Next thing you know, the stove doesn't work. And oh my Lord, we all know how management works. Okay.
Right.
They will take forever just to come and take the simple problem. But like I said, my experience was, it wasn't too bad. And if I could do it all over again the same exact way, I will definitely do it the same exact way over and over, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Because, because the ending goal, the most important thing and the beautiful thing about it is the ending result. And the ending result is moving out. That's where the excitement comes. Like, you didn't put in all the hard work. You didn't, to me, I feel like once you're found eligible for shelter, that's like the relief. Like, for me, it was the relief. Like, oh my God. Because waiting, I went in August. September, I got the not, the not eligible. Then from September to December December 22nd is when I got the approval letter. And it's so crazy. It's so crazy because December 5th was the day that I was transferred into the shelter that I moved out from. And December 5th of last year is when I moved out to shelter, exactly on the same day. I'm like, that is crazy. And that is
Wow.
not amazing. I don't even know what to say. I was like, wow. I came here on December 5th and I left on December 5th. Like, that ain't God. I don't know who it is.
Right. Definitely. But guys, we have come to the end of the podcast. Again, this is your host, Kay Did. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being an amazing audience. Please follow us on all social media platforms. Anything that you heard that you think you want more information about, we'll have DV information down below. We'll have the City FEP's number if you want to contact something down below. We'll have a couple more things down below, and we hope that you use those resources or give to somebody that you know who needs those resources to make sure their life is better. Please follow us, and please send this out to somebody who might like this podcast, or even on one of our other. It's only just weird though. If you're on I think it's different on every platform, but if you're on Spotify, when you send out a link for the particular podcast, you might only just see the whole podcast page, not the exact episode. I think Apple might be different on how you send it out. So we're on a couple of platforms that get streamed on. So depending on what platform you have, send them out that link. If not, if you go on YouTube and find the same title, because we do everything on YouTube, and that means when you go, they should also follow us. So take that link from YouTube, and that'll be a direct link for that particular podcast. So that's a way of making sure that person hear exactly what episode that you heard, if they would like it. Okay. So all the information we talked about will definitely be down below. And thank you for being amazing. And we speak to you in the next 2 weeks, because we right now we're posting every 2 weeks, and we might change our schedule later down in the year. We don't know yet, but we have some changes coming up this year. I don't know if you'll see it on your end as much, but we have little changes coming up, and I hope that you can stay with us, and hopefully the sound sounds a little bit nicer than before. We're trying. I know nothing about podcasting. I know more about YouTubing, because I'm a YouTuber. I'm a small one, but if I'm just trying to figure it out as I go, and I hope I'm doing a good job, and I hope that these podcasts can help people to be able to change their life and make it better. And if you do want to follow me or talk to me privately, you could talk to me at the Hear Our Voices Instagram, DM me. TikTok is really harder to get me on, But DM me or at K Did Davis on Instagram, or pretty honestly any platform, but TikTok is really not the best thing. Instagram is easiest and more clear for me to understand and get to everybody's information. And no question is too small. No question is dumb. If you need something, definitely hit me up and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for being amazing. And if you want to drop a comment on this episode, you could do that too. I seen the comment. I really appreciate it. And thank you. And have a nice day, guys, and be safe. Bye.